What's up, everybody? Welcome back to my channel, Clemente Collector. And today I have Howard Chasser back on the show to do some more dealer talk post-national. Howard, thank you for coming back on the show.
You're very welcome. Thank you for having me, Theo.
So I saw Howard multiple times at the show. I actually picked up my Manny's Land card from him at the show. It is a beauty. I'm so happy I have this. Thank you, Howard, for selling me this prior to getting to the show. I appreciate it.
You're very welcome.
I'm sure you probably have a PSA 6 or something. What's yours graded in?
I know I have it. I don't even know what the grade is. Like I shared with you last time, a lot of the stuff I'm not as focused on grade as I am just having a good, clean copy of something.
That's cool. There was a lot of people who came up to me and told me that they went to your table. Kind of feel like you're starting to become a little bit of a YouTube celebrity out there.
You know what? Completely unexpected. I kind of felt like that too. I had a lot of people coming up and introducing themselves, saying they saw the interview, they really loved the interview,
nice.
Saying hello, and yeah.
That's awesome, man. Yeah, I would probably say that was the most thing people came up to me and said, "Hey, I went to Howard's table." I was like, "That's cool." So really cool. I'm happy we're going to get to do this again. I thought it was really cool how you had your son at the table. I think he was probably the youngest helper there. How did he like helping you?
You know, it was very interesting going in because I introduced my kids, my older son at age 8 and the younger one who you saw at age 6, to collecting and the hobby. And my younger one, the one who was with me, Azriel, really hadn't really taken to it at all. He really didn't. I dragged him to a couple of shows for like a single day to help out, and he was really not that interested. But something really shifted for him. At the National, he got a lot of compliments. I did train him also when he was younger in my natural food store as a cashier when he was 8, and kind of taught him a little how to engage with people. And clearly he was doing that. He got numerous very specific, direct compliments, both, people talking directly to him as well as people talking to me. There's one guy that stands out who came back with his girlfriend, purchased a relatively expensive set of non-sports cards and made it a point to tell me, like, the reason I'm back here buying this is because of your son.
Wow.
He engaged with me. He smiled at me. We were talking, and he's like, "You're doing a great job."
That's awesome.
As a dad. And my son really, like I said, something really shifted for him because he was loving it. He was also I think on Saturday he asked if he could start going to try to sell stuff to dealers. He wanted to go hustle some stuff. So I let him go do that. And man, I'll tell you, he was really good. He sold a few things for me.
Wow, he might be good. He might be the guy who's taking over the empire whenever you step down.
Maybe. Cool. He's definitely expressed an interest in coming to more shows now.
That's cool. Hey, I tried to negotiate with him for some big Clemente cards, and you stepped in. I was trying. No, I'm just messing with you. I think you better buy him a brand new bicycle or something after the show, man. That was a lot of work to put in. So
well, he got paid, I think, pretty well for it, which
okay.
He knew he was getting paid ahead of time, and took some of those proceeds, and he ended up buying a box of Fortnite cards for himself. So.
Nice, good. I talked to Jason from Cards and Comics after the show, and he showed me the 71 O-Pee-Chee Clemente card you sold him. I don't know why I didn't realize you had it, and that's my grail of O-Pee-Chee cards. I probably told you that, but
yeah, you're not alone on that one.
They're hard to find.
Yes,
they really are.
Yes, there's only 68 of them PSA graded in any grades.
Yeah, I wasn't very happy you let that one go, so I had to tell you about that one. All right, so it was said that it was the biggest national as far as attendance goes that they've seen. Did you feel like it was your busiest card show ever?
Oh, for sure. And if you remember, I think when we talked pre-show, I actually predicted it was going to be a record show in terms of foot traffic based on what I had experienced at other shows. So that's completely not a surprise. I was beyond slammed busy. I couldn't even believe how busy I was. Literally from dealer setup day right through the end of the day Saturday. Sunday was the only time where we got to take like a little bit of a breath. But ordinarily, I like to walk the show to look for stuff either for myself or for resale, to connect with some like old friends and whatnot. I really didn't get to do that. I think I walked around maybe about 45 minutes or an hour Wednesday morning, and I couldn't get out from behind my table because it was a constant stream of people. I have a bunch of people that told me they were trying to get over to me, and they couldn't get over to me to say hello because there were like 2 and 3 people deep at my table.
Yeah. I was there Thursday, Friday, Saturday. A lot of collectors told me they felt Thursday or Friday was the busiest day and Sunday was the slowest. What would you agree with that, or what do you think?
So Sunday definitely I would agree was the slowest, which is pretty standard for card shows. The last day of the show is typically your slowest. I'm trying to think. Wednesday, Thursday. I think actually Friday was my busiest day. Thursday and Friday were pretty good, but in terms of sales wise, Friday was my busiest day. People I couldn't even begin to count. Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Wednesday, even Tuesday. The place was just slammed. It's crazy how busy it was.
I heard, I don't know if you want to call it complaints, but I've heard some people say that there were way more people with either media, dealer, whatever you want to call it, badges, and you guys were busy before the VIPs could even come in. Did you feel like maybe they might have gave out too many dealer badges, or like it felt too busy prior to the show starting?
So I don't know what's okay or not okay to say here. So I guess that being the case, I'll just say what I know. You're allotted, when you get a dealer table, you're allotted a certain number of badges for people to help you. Yeah. You can then purchase, particularly at the National, you can purchase additional badges, and they're expensive. I think it's like a couple $100 or something like that for a badge. It's standard at most card shows that there are a handful of people who I know not to be dealers, or at least dealers that are table holders, that get into the shows, typically from another dealer giving them one of their badges or buying them a badge. I'll do it every once in a blue moon for, if I have a really, really, really good customer who's coming, we're going to do a transaction, I'll offer them a badge for a period of time to come into the show to be able to do that transaction, and they get to walk around a little bit early. I would agree with the sentiment of what you're talking about, and I actually made the statement to a few people that there were many more, I'll call it non-table holders, with dealer badges than I've ever seen at a show on Tuesday.
Yeah, crazy. The group I was with, I would say not many of us left with much money left in our pocket, which to me is a good sign of a good show. Based off of what I saw and how much people were spending around me, was it your most profitable or biggest sales show you've ever had?
It was not. That said, it wasn't far. It was a really good show. Really, really good show. And I spoke to a lot of other people. I always like to kind of get the pulse of what's going on in the show, speaking to some other dealer friends, and there were a lot of transactions happening. Some of them very, very big dollars.
Yeah.
And there were actually multiple people that bought from me, ended up coming back around to my table, who were interested to buy more, but said to me, I'm sorry, I ran out of money. I can't buy anything else.
Yeah. I mean, not that it's not atypical, but I had multiple guys who were in my friend group who came to the show on Saturday, and they said they had nothing to spend. They were just there walking around, which I'm sure it happens at every show, but I actually heard kind of the opposite last year. I heard a lot of people not buying because they said dealers weren't ready to deal last year. They were kind of stuck in COVID pricing, and they said that this year it felt like dealers were ready to deal. Do you kind of agree with that statement that dealers were more willing to maybe bend on pricing?
So again, I think we touched on this a little in our pre-national interview. I don't believe, and I don't believe last year is necessarily different than this year. Some dealers are willing to deal, some dealers are not, and for me, like I shared with you earlier, it's a differentiation between if I have something that you can find 50 of in the show, yeah, I'm ready to deal on that. If I have the only one of something in the show, probably not going to get a deal on that.
Yeah. Makes sense.
I heard, I'm sorry, I heard mixed responses also from the people I check in with. Some people had the experience that there were a number of dealers that were not willing to deal at this show as well, and others that were.
Yeah, I did hear some dealers that were kind of firm. I had a couple dealers that it just seemed like they kind of had the standard 10% across the board kind of negotiation. Like, what do you want for this? They take off 10%. What do you want for this? They take off 10%. It was like, well, what if I have a comp that shows that they just weren't having any of it? It was just literally like, I'm going to give you 10%. You take it or leave it. That's kind of how it felt. So, but I mean, to each their own. I just, you know what you're dealing with. So,
yep.
So this is probably a bad question for you. Who was the most popular player that people were looking for at the show?
I mean, it's always the same group of guys. It almost doesn't really matter what the show is outside of certain geographic things. Like when I go up to Massachusetts, Williams is quite popular where he's not as much pretty much anywhere else. But, Clemente, Mays, Mantle, probably top three, Ruth, Wagner, Cobb, right up there.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I had Clemente's shirt on, and I probably pulled about 10 dealers, and 8 of them said Clemente was the most popular. My friend said, well, they might be saying that because they see that you're a Clemente buyer. But I said I had multiple cards that I passed on, and I went back and they were gone. We were in Chicago, and it didn't feel like Lou Brock or any of those Chicago Cubs players. I was hearing much buzz about maybe Jordan more than anything else.
There were some Cubs guys, some hardcore Cubs guys coming around. Generally for the earlier ones like Johnny Evers, Frank Chance, definitely Ernie Banks, a little bit Lou Brock. There was some those guys outside of Chicago. I almost never get asked for them, but in Chicago, there's definitely some people coming around looking for them.
Okay, cool. So one of my biggest complaints about the show being my first national was the show layout. What's your thoughts on me as a dealer? What's your thoughts on how they laid out this national, and what's your thoughts on it?
So my biggest criticism of the show, far and away, is the heat. Or the lack of working air conditioning from Tuesday to Saturday was disgraceful, beyond disgraceful. I know ambulances were there a couple of days for people who struggled with the heat, and it was horrific being on the dealer side of the table. I literally lost, I think, about 7 pounds over the course of the national, and I attribute a big chunk of that to the heat. It was disgusting, and they really need to do something about that moving forward. That said, I hear you about the layout. It gets a little bit tricky because the demand for tables is incredible, and I think what they did is they tried to open up as much space as they could in that convention center to get in as many people as they could. Who wanted space, who wanted table space. So once you're looking at the constraints of the outline or the geography of the building, I don't know that they have a lot of alternatives to make it much more easily walkable. Let's call it. I know they had, at least, again, I didn't get to walk, so I from what I could tell, they had like kind of 3 separate areas.
Yeah.
So I know people who were in, all the areas, and they said they got plenty of traffic. So people definitely made their way around. That said, I could certainly see where, from somebody walking the show, you would want it to be a little bit more walk friendly.
Yeah. For the amount of people that were there, the aisles didn't feel wide enough. There weren't enough overhead. There weren't enough overhead signs compared to, maybe nationals of old. Like, some areas you could see where the aisle number was. Some areas didn't even have a sign. It was hard to find dealer table numbers. You literally had to move their table skirt to kind of see what their table number was. So that kind of made it hard to kind of know where you were at. And the biggest one that I've heard actually from everybody, which I'm actually surprised about, I thought it was maybe more of me being newer, was why can't the National have the vintage dealers in a section, the modern dealers in a section, and anybody who's kind of 50-50 in between? Why can't you guys take a survey before you get here and it says, are 60% of your cards modern or vintage? And then maybe tier system those dealers based off of modern or vintage, and then it'd be a lot more less walking for me. That'd be for sure. But what's your opinion on it? Go ahead.
I think on the surface, the idea is a good one. I think the problem potentially comes in because location is critical in terms of where it makes a big difference to business. And the guys, the way they work it, basically, if you have a seniority, the people who have been doing the National the longest have the opportunity to pick their tables first.
Yep.
So those are the people generally who have the best locations.
Yep.
If, let's say, one of those people who's been doing the show for 30 years deals strictly modern, where do they get to pick? And are they automatically, who's going to have the better priority between vintage or modern dealers?
Right.
And then somebody's going to not be happy. Either the vintage dealers if they don't have the better locations, or the modern dealers if they don't have the better locations.
Right.
So yeah, it's not a simple thing.
I definitely get that. And I mean, I think it was pretty evident when you walked in. The main run was vintage dealers that have been there for 30 years. I think everybody saw that. So it was pretty obvious who the guys who were tenured at the National to me. But I honestly, I would have had such a better experience with how big the place was, to be like, all right, I can just focus on this room. I can keep making loops in this room. Another example I brought up was Pokemon. I get that it's a sports card convention. I'm not going to say it's not, but there were dealers that sold Pokemon. So whether we wanted it there or we didn't want it there, and we all have kids that like Pokemon. My kid likes Pokemon. My thought was, can they not find like 5 amazing Pokemon dealers that's all they focus on, and put them in the corner of this building? And then I can go over there, buy my son a Charizard card, and then I can get out of there. Instead, I was walking around aimlessly trying to find Pokemon dealers. It was pretty brutal, to say the least.
I think maybe to your point, I wonder if they could do something in the program, and the guys, there's new management
owners, right? Owners. Aren't they new owners of the National?
It's not new owners of the National, but there's new management in place starting next year.
Okay.
It's Joe Dralick, Jimmy Ryan, and Brian Copel, I think it is. And they're very receptive to ideas. So feel free to reach out. If I'm happy to give you contact information for any of them. And they're very receptive to ideas. They've been at it for a long time. They've promoted. They all promote larger regional shows. So I do expect to see some changes. Again, the floor plan I think is tricky, but I'm wondering maybe if something in the program could single out, or to the idea that you just said. All right, here's the 10 Pokemon dealers with their table locations. So at least
yeah. Yeah, at least make it a little bit easier for somebody with kids to try to maneuver in there. But let's get to another topic I wanted to talk about as we talk about vintage versus modern. to me, the biggest thing that I saw that I really didn't think about till I got there was the difference between vintage and modern collectors and the younger and the older demographic. So some people call the younger guys Pelly boys because they always have their Pelican cases.
I haven't heard that.
So I guess from you being a dealer, how often did you see under 30-year-olds buy vintage from you? Like what percentage would you say?
It's really hard to break down percentage wise, but I can say it's a fair number and
Okay.
growing.
Okay.
I've talked to numerous people, not specifically at the national, but over the past number of months, and I can say that there are a lot of people that have moved from modern to vintage. Sorry, I just got to fix my camera. And it's a lot of younger people. Like there's one kid, Jason, who I think he's like 13 or 14, and he's collecting Clemente,
Nice.
like oddball Clemente and stuff.
Nice.
So there are definitely younger people, and I expect over time more people, more of those, what do you call them, Pelly boys?
Pelly boys, yeah.
Will transition from modern to vintage.
Okay. So you think it's a natural maybe collecting progression. It might not be 50%, but it's like a decent percentage. It's a natural progression as you collect modern. You eventually some people eventually start liking the vintage and start going backwards. That's what you kind of feel, right?
Absolutely, and I don't think I don't even know that it's a large percentage, but it's a percentage. You know, whether I'm guessing it's 10%, it's 15%, it's 20%.
Okay, so let's talk about the future of the Nationals. So obviously, we know next year's Cleveland. I've heard Cleveland is going to be a lot easier to maneuver because the building's more square, maybe. But what's your thoughts on Cleveland? It's also smaller, I believe, than Chicago was, but maybe I'm wrong on that. So what's your experience with Cleveland?
So it's definitely smaller than Chicago. In fact, they do have a lot less tables, and a lot of people who had tables at this national did not get tables for Cleveland yet, myself included on that list. They ran out of tables at priority 3, which is people who have done the national for 3 years. I'm hoping to be pulled off the waiting list and be able to secure a table for Cleveland. It's definitely smaller. My recollection last time I was there, it is squarer, so it may be easier to walk in that way. It's a shorter drive for me. I like that. It's about 8, 9 hours rather than like 13 or 14 for Chicago. Yeah. And we'll see. It's historically been a good show.
Okay. So I heard a lot of talk at this year's national about the vote for 2026. Obviously, you were part of that meeting, being a dealer, and one of the big sticking points was Atlantic City and how they kind of bribed the dealers by offering $1,000 if you vote for them and go there. I know it's tough for you because it's in your backyard. So, but go ahead and tell me what your thoughts are on Atlantic City.
Yeah, it's not that tough, and the gentleman that was there pitching Atlantic City got an earful for me after the presentation. There were a lot of promises about changes, and I think we may have discussed a little bit our pre-national interview. From a logistics standpoint, Atlantic City was a nightmare. There was no cell service, there was no Wi-Fi. I personally, and I don't know if it was just me, but I had an issue with the union where I didn't get the tables I was supposed to have for the first day. I heard from many customers, parking was horrific. The guy from Atlantic City was basically there apologizing and offering a lot of lip service to how things had changed and would change and are in the process of changing. And to me, I'll believe it if I see it. One of the things I told him was, like, before I would vote to come back there, and it, as you mentioned, it's definitely the closest location to me. But I honestly, with what I experienced last year in Atlantic City, would rather drive to Cleveland or drive to Chicago to not have to experience all the rest of that. It was so much that made business and doing business so hard. It was horrific. So, you know, if I hear from people, and this is what I said to him, if you can put me in touch with people who have conventions there between now and then, and I hear from them that things have changed, that might go toward my willingness to be back there. But short of that, like words are empty.
Oh yeah.
After the experience last year, words are just empty.
Yeah, I've heard multiple dealers, not dealers, collectors say that Atlantic City is the one place they would have to think twice about going back to. You know, the lodging situation wasn't ideal. The crime situation wasn't ideal. So it's pretty crazy. You know, we're in a point right now where the National is so important to so many collectors. It's pretty crazy that I'm hearing some of these guys say they would think twice about going back. So that's not a good thing to me. And to me, it tells me even that extra $1,000, there might be a lot of business lost by going there, is my personal opinion on it. But another one that got brought up is Atlanta. And I know Atlanta hasn't been on the list for a while, I guess. I guess other than the fact it's not in the Midwest, I guess why are some dealers, you know, probably not going to pick Atlanta? Why is it not the ideal place to go, I guess?
So why? And I had to ask myself because it was sounding kind of good to me. And it's still, I don't think it would be a bad choice, although it is a risky one. And that risk has to do with, they did do shows back there back in like the 1980s, I think was the last time the show was there. And I spoke to dealers there were 2 shows there, who were at those shows. And they said those shows were just not well attended and not good shows. That said, 1980s is a long time ago. The hobby is very different today than it was then. And what they pitched to us was showing a brand new convention center. And the one thing, honestly, like I was leaning more towards Chicago until the heat / lack of air conditioning situation, because I know that hurt business. There's not a question in my mind that hurt business. I talked to numerous people that couldn't stay in the room for as long as they wanted to. They had to leave. And that's not good for business. So I'm imagining it's a brand new facility down in Atlanta and seems massive, like way bigger than we would need as a national in order to be able to accommodate plenty of tables, probably even more than what we had in Chicago if need be. And they have the infrastructure to support a huge show like the National has become / is becoming. So I think it's, like I said, it's a risk because we haven't been there since the 1980s, but I think it's calculated one, and one potentially worth taking.
Yeah. I kind of agree in some ways, because I know for a fact it's like the biggest airport in the United States. So I know they have the infrastructure, they have Super Bowls down there, they have everything. So the National would be a piece of cake for them. But I also think about local kids, local communities in that area. You know, Chicago's been done multiple times, so you might already gained, you know, kids who weren't card collectors and now they're card collectors from going. Maybe going down south, you might gain a whole new group of kids that, you know, would never consider card collecting if they didn't have the National in their backyard. So I definitely think it's something to think about, is expanding, maybe, I don't know if you want to call it fan base, collector base. I think it's something interesting to talk about. So the Fanatics. So I personally heard Fanatics is working on their own National, possibly their own once a year card show that's going to be like the National. Did you hear similar things? Is that possibly in the works?
I didn't hear specifically that they're working on a National. I did hear that they are looking to start promoting shows. It wouldn't surprise me if they were looking to come up with something to compete with the National, but I didn't specifically hear that.
Do you think, from a dealer standpoint, if they did create a second National, let's say, and it was maybe 2 months apart or something like that, or maybe 6 months apart, do you think the more the merrier. It's more opportunity for you to sell. Why not? Maybe they would have it in California or something a little bit different. Or do you kind of feel like, we have this here, we need to treat it like the Super Bowl? Really not a good idea to have a second Super Bowl kind of? What's kind of your thoughts on that, I guess?
I look at it from a couple of different perspectives. I could see it being a positive thing in the sense that competition, more than anything else, really spearheads innovation. So it forces whoever's competing to get better. And I think that there's a lot that could happen to make the show that exists now better. Some of the things that we've touched on. Yeah. I'm hopeful with the new management taking over that we will see some positive changes to that end. There's also, and I think of it as analogous to what's gone on with some of the auctions and the auction companies. I personally believe there's way too many auctions right now. It started during COVID, and there was a huge spike in demand. So most of the major auction companies expanded the number of auctions that they did by quite a bit. And I don't think it's sustainable long term. Yeah. I think that it's gonna hurt. I think it's part of what's contributed to some of the softness that we've seen in the market. There's just so many cards available all the time, as compared to when they were available less of the time, let's call it. So, is one more national show going to be a good thing or a bad thing? I don't know. I think that there's enough going on in the hobby. If it was spread out far enough, the hobby could probably support a second very large national show.
Yeah.
Much more than that, I don't know.
Yeah, it's very interesting. The other thing I wanted to talk about is obviously any dealer leaves a card show with cards left over. I wanted to give you the opportunity, maybe you should show some cards you didn't sell at the national, and hey, if anybody out there's interested, I'll have Howard's information available in the comments. You can reach out directly to him. Why don't you show some cards that you didn't sell at the national?
Sure. So the first one is it's actually a near set of cards, and it's a price point that's not for everybody. But I was offering a near complete T206 set.
Wow.
It has 518 of the 524 cards in the set. The only cards it's missing was the big four: the T206 Wagner, T206 Doyle, the Maggie error, the Plank, and then it's missing the DeMitt and the O'Hara. It's a low grade set. It's priced at $85,000 for the 518 cards. Most of the Hall of Famers are graded, and I did have a few people look at it and comment that they felt like it was a very, very, very good price for the set. So that's awesome. One.
Okay.
And then back to Clemente. While I sold quite a few Clemente cards, I had a few that I really thought would go because they're just amazing cards.
Wait. Make sure I don't own any of these. No, I don't. I have that. I have that one. All right.
This is a 1960 Topps Clemente in a PSA 8.5, and it's just super, super, super tough in this kind of condition. It's a new grade as well, under their stricter grading standards. So it's an incredibly hard card to find in this kind of shape. This was the last card that I added to my PC because I spent so long looking for one that had the eye qualities of what I wanted, and this is just a spectacular, spectacular card.
That looks great.
Another one, 1971. I had a couple of almost sales on this. This is probably one of Clemente's hottest cards in my experience, particularly in this grade. This is a PSA 8, once again a new grade, which these almost never get 8s these days.
Can you hold it closer?
Really well centered.
Can you hold it closer, Howard?
Yeah.
Wow, that's my favorite Clemente image in card. Like I told you earlier, I really want the Apici one, but yeah, that must be very low pop because his black borders are brutal.
The black borders are brutal, and like I said, this is a new grade. So I did have a lot of people looking at it, but nobody that pulled the trigger at the show. So that's still available.
What's your your sticker price on that, just to give people a heads up?
My ask is $32.99. I got a little bit of room on it. I think the last couple of comps are at like 2,600 and 2,900, but those aren't for new grades.
Okay.
And if you look at those cards, like look at the corners, like we talked about in the last interview, versus looking at this card, this card is just head and shoulders nicer than either of those.
Wow.
Lastly, a rare one.
Oh, don't show that off. Don't show that.
Especially in grade, this is a mint 9,
Wow.
which is a next to impossible grade to find this in. There's almost always a little print anomaly up in the top corner. This one doesn't have it, which is part of what garnered it to 9. And it's just not an easy card to find at all in any grade. So yeah, I was a little surprised that I still have this one.
What's your ask on that one right now?
Let me find that one. That one is $35.99.
Okay, could I do like 10 easy payments over the next 10 years on that one?
I don't know about 10 years, but I actually do layaways.
Okay. I'll think about the layaway process then. That's awesome. That's great, man. You had to tease me with that last one, but Howard, that's really cool. Like I said, guys, I'll have down in the comments Howard's contact. Where else do you have some of your cards available if somebody wanted to go look at some of your inventory, Howard?
Easiest thing to do is to email me, and I can email back a link to a Flickr album that I have with a lot of cards listed. Okay. That's hcv123@att.net. Or I do have an eBay store, although I don't have that many cards listed there. I do have some, and that's under favorite_things, my eBay username.
Okay. Well, what I'll do is I'll have you text me both links. I'll put them in the comments too. People can see the links in the comments. Last but not least, I know you weren't able to leave the table much. Did you grab anything for your PC from the show that you would like to show off?
I did, which is not usual. Most shows I go to, I don't really expect to find anything that I can add to my PC because there's so few things that I either am looking for or haven't seen. But a friend of mine who sets up decided to let some stuff go, so I did grab a few. These are magazines that are from Puerto Rico with Clemente on the cover. I have a whole bunch of them. I actually have to catalog them because it's not impossible that I may actually have one or two of these, but by memory, I didn't think I did. So I grabbed these.
That's an awesome image right there. That's cool.
Yeah. I know.
Nice.
This is a very similar picture to a U.S. magazine that was issued, I think, in '72. I'm forgetting the name of it, but I didn't even realize it when I got it. But I'm recognizing like the yellow color, and I think it's the same image of Clemente.
Wow.
Yeah, that one.
Nice.
Yeah, this kind of stuff I love because you so rarely see it. You know, so little of this was saved. This one is from Mexico, a hit magazine. Wow. Got him on the front and the back cover.
I've never seen that image on the back before.
Yeah.
That's cool.
Well, and that's a cool thing. Like a lot of the images on them and in them aren't the images that we've seen on anything in the U.S.
Wow.
So yeah, grab those. That was
awesome.
Pretty
sweet. Awesome. Well, this was a lot of fun. I was really looking forward to this, Howard. It's always great hearing from the other side of the table. I really appreciate you coming on, man. It was a lot of fun.
Thanks. I really appreciate you having me. It has been fun, and like I said, unexpectedly kind of cool with all the people who saw it and came over and said hello, and a number who bought stuff too.
Yeah, YouTube has a bigger following than I think a lot of people realize. So that's really cool that you're a YouTube celebrity now. So Uh, all right, Howard. Well, thanks for coming on, and I'm sure we'll do this again in the future. And anybody out there that watched this, thank you for watching. I'll see everybody on the next one.